The encounter in Doda is continuing. It's been over 24 hours now. 4 soldiers, including an officer of the Indian Army, are confirmed dead. 3 other Jawans are also dead. This is the 10th attack in Jammu and Kashmir just in the last month and a half or so. Most of these attacks are now happening in the Jammu, Poonch, Rajouri, Doda regions, which is south of the Pir Panjal. There are fewer attacks in the Kashmir Valley, perhaps because of the heightened security there in the aftermath of the abrogation of Article 370. Is Jammu now fast becoming the new terror battleground? Are these repeated attacks, particularly in the last month and a half, proof of both an intelligence failure and an operational failure? Who should be held accountable for that? And the most important question, as directed by the Supreme Court of India, can elections be held before the 30th of September, and that too in the shadow of this terror?
जो ये डेंस फॉरेस्ट है और घना जंगल है, ये जो एरिया है वो बहुत बड़ा है और ये इंटरकनेक्टेड है। यानी कि अगर कठुआ से कोई अगर इन्फिल्ट्रेशन करता है, घुसपैठ करता है, तो वो वहाँ से होता हुआ डूडू, बसंतगढ़, उधमपुर के बाद और वो इस इलाके तक पहुँच सकता है।
अफसोस ये है कि there is no accountability. By now the head should have rolled. The DG should have been sacked by now. और जो इस वक्त के DG हैं, he is more, busy with fixing things politically.
आतंकियों के हौसले बुलंद हैं और वो जम्मू रीजन में आए और सीधे हमारे सेना पर हमला कर, और मोदी जी इटली और रूस में शांति।
There is overwhelming evidence to show that many had honed the art of running with the hare and hunting with the hound to a near signs that left both the common men and the security men bewildered, frightened and confused.
All right, now what is particularly new and also worrisome at the same time is that since early June, there's been a sharp spike in terror activity in what has been relatively the peaceful region of Jammu. On the 9th of June, 9 people were killed and 41 injured when terrorists attacked pilgrims who were going to a temple in Reasi, that is again south of Pir Panjal. A couple of days after that, between the 11th and 12th of June, 6 soldiers were injured in twin terror attacks that happened in Doda and in Gando. Then on the 26th of June, towards the end of that month, 3 Jaish terrorists were gunned down in the Doda district. On the 7th of July, army personnel were injured after terrorists attacked an army checkpost in Rajouri. On the 8th of July, 5 soldiers were killed after terrorists attacked a convoy in Kathua. On the 15th of July, again, 5 security personnel killed in Doda, and the hunt is on for the terrorists right now. So the point is, clearly something has changed. The attacks which used to happen by and large north of the Pir Panjal in Kashmir for many years and decades has now in the last year or so, certainly in the last 6 months, has shifted south of Pir Panjal. Much more attacks are now happening in the Jammu, Poonch, Rajouri, Doda sectors as opposed to what is happening in Kashmir. The million-dollar question now is, A, what has led to this? How are these not being detected? How are these not being prevented? And operationally, why is it taking so long to neutralize these terrorists? Why is there this sudden spurt of terrorist incidents? And the most important question, which is a political question, which will have to be answered before the 30th of September, which is the mandated deadline by the Supreme Court for holding elections in Jammu and Kashmir, can it happen in the shadow of this spike in terror? Aras Patania is leader of the BJP. He's now joining us. Mahima Singh, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Muzaffar Iqbal Khan, leader of the National Conference. Lalit Ambardar is a Kashmiri activist. And Colonel Dini, retired, is a defense expert. Let me start with you. All right, we'll try and go across to the political guests. But I want to first start with Colonel Dini. If you could explain to our viewers why this recent spurt of violence that we're seeing is something that we haven't seen before. Jammu was relatively much more peaceful compared to Kashmir. A, why is this happening? And B, how does one stop this?
Zaka, as you rightly mentioned in your introduction, that since last 6 months or so, we have seen the spurt of violence, especially south of Pir Panjal. And one of the reasons which we all know is that, honestly speaking, Zaka, Pakistan does not have any option but to resort to, actions south of Pir Panjal, because in Kashmir Valley, the anti-terrorist activities or the anti-terrorist grid is so strong that virtually it has become impossible for the terrorists to carry out their operations there. So that is what we had seen over the last few years, that the level of violence had come down. Even the stone pelting incidents have come down, and things were going into normalcy at a very rapid pace. So Pakistan had to calibrate their activities in such a manner that they wanted to make this to be seen in the world that Kashmir issue is still alive. So what best option next which they have is to carry out the operations down south, especially in this Jammu, Doda and this area, where the terrain relatively is much more easier for infiltration. And we have seen this, about 20 years back or 15 years back, these areas where there were militancy, there were terrorism which happened. And that is why these Rashtriya Rifles units were there, but we had overcome them in a great manner. So now what has happened is that this particular terrain issue, along with what also happens is, Zaka, that over a period of time, when you do not have actual operations going on, your intelligence setup also loosens a bit. It takes time. When you're doing actual operations, you're fast, you're on your toes all the time. So what happens is that probably because of this lack of operations happening in this particular area, the tactical intelligence which was coming, like what happens now in Kashmir, that I think is not happening in this south of Pir Panjal. And that is why more or less we are going back to the 90s, wherein the jungle bashing used to be the operation which that they used to have a generic information that there is a group of terrorists in this particular area of a forest, and the army used to launch, and in that the casualties used to be huge. That used to happen in early 90s when our unit and all used to be there. So I think that is what is happening here.
So in a sense, you're saying we're going back to the tumultuous days of the early 90s. R.S. Pathania is now joining us of the BJP. Mr. Pathania, 10 attacks have taken place in the last month and a half in Jammu. Many of them, like I said, are in the Jammu region. On the 9th of June in Reasi, in the 11th of June in Kathua, in the 11th of June in Doda, Chattargala, 11th of June in Udhampur, 12th of June in Doda, 27th of June in Doda, 8th of July in Kathua, and now the latest attack which has happened on the 15th of July in Doda. Colonel Dini was saying that the terrorists are changing their tactics, far fewer attacks happening now in Kashmir, much more in Jammu. He's saying we're perhaps returning back to the tumultuous and violent days of the 1990s.
Yes, Jacob, first of all, a very good evening to everybody on board. So, as Colonel Saab has rightly pointed it out, it is as good as an English adage, the wolf is changing its spots. But one thing very clear and very categorical remains, that after 2014 and particularly after 5th of August 2019, there has been a considerable decline in terrorist activities in Jammu and Kashmir. This is not only what Bharatiya Janata Party says, this is not only what central government says, this is what the international agencies and experts, while judging Jammu Kashmir on various parameters which govern the upsurge and the prevalence of militancy in Jammu and Kashmir, they would say one aspect. Secondly, I very, very honestly admit the existence and the vulnerability of security forces and the citizens in the territory of, in the militancy-born territory of Jammu and Kashmir, one part, and the changed tactics of the Pakistan and the promoters and propagators of terrorism sitting across the border. They first choked to that hybrid terrorism. Now, as the Director General of Police has pointed out, they infiltrate from from Punjab and Haryana borders, and they ultimately then they sneak into the Jammu and Kashmir territory. But I don't want to shirk away from our duty and from our honors from protecting the lives and limbs of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. This is a new challenge. This is a gauntlet which has been thrown before the security forces, before the armed forces, and I'm fully confident that the security forces,
Mr. Pathania, before I go to your Congress
they will be able.
Two questions. One is, you have been saying consistently that since Article 370 was abrogated, violence has come down. In the last 2 months, certainly violence doesn't seem to have come down. So what explains that? And two, you have a bigger problem, which is in the next 2 months, you have to revert back to the Supreme Court and tell them when you can conduct elections. The Supreme Court has given you a deadline of September 30th to conduct the assembly elections. Do you believe, given the level of attacks we are seeing in Jammu, that assembly elections can take place in this shadow of terror?
Sir, Bharatiya Janata Party is for full prevalence of democracy in all forms, which includes the legislative elections in Jammu and Kashmir. Bharatiya Janata Party has made it stand very clear on each and every occasion. So the election system and the election paraphernalia, they have also geared up in Jammu and Kashmir. The short summary revision is going on, the relocation of polling stations is going on, and more so, the election staff, the security staff, they have also done a series of meetings in Jammu and Kashmir. I am hopeful we'll be able to not to overshoot the deadline of 30th of September, one part. Secondly, so far as your question is, I have a very, very humble submission to each and everybody on board and all the political players, sir. Terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir has been an offshoot and offspring of an irresponsible neighbor sitting in our immediate neighborhood, and which has been who's given to the habit of creating cudgels at the drop of a hat. So it is too sensitive an issue to play politics over. Let's be constructive, let's be pragmatic, let's be cooperative, and let's have full faith in the valor and in the acumen, and particularly in the professionalism of security forces in Jammu and Kashmir. We should trust them. You may not trust Narendra Modi, you may not trust Bharatiya Janata Party, but we should trust, and we should at least encourage the security forces fighting against all odds in Jammu and Kashmir.
Please respond to that. What Mr. Pathania is saying is that you don't have to trust Mr. Modi or the government or the BJP, but certainly trust the
because
forces.
They hate Modi, na?
Yeah,
they may not trust him.
Let the forces do their job. It's very clear, as what Colonel Dini was also saying a moment ago, that because there is so much security presence and a changed almost situation on the ground in Kashmir, in the last few years. That's why the terrorists are changing their tactics and now targeting the Jammu region. This is happening at the behest of a neighbor which has only ill will for us, and therefore trying to play politics like Mehbooba Mufti, for example, doing today, is only going to undermine that effort of the security forces. Please respond, ma'am.
Jai Hind. Zaka, in fact, it is a very critical question, and the acts that have hit the state of Jammu and Kashmir over the past, especially 36 days, and I would say rather over the past 32 months, is beyond condemnable, as our national president has also reiterated that there is no place for this kind of terrorism, and we totally stand against it together. But PM Modi and his cabinet has been living in denial. They have been projecting normalcy when the situation in Jammu and Kashmir has been anything but normal through and through. The BJP spokespersons come on your panels and project lies. But if you hear the father, retired Colonel Bhuvanesh Thapa, of one of the major ranks officers who has martyred, who has paid for the denial of this government in their policies with his life, you would realize what he's saying. Retired Colonel Bhuvanesh Thapa says, Zaka, that the government should have curtailed the support base of militants in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and he has himself served in the state of Jammu and Kashmir in the past. The BJP spokesperson is very conveniently talking about consensus, about coming together today, just like the Prime Minister chooses to very conveniently stay silent. It's been 36 days that this kind of terrorism has hit Jammu and Kashmir vigorously, and it's been 38 days of this newly elected fractured government. But the policies of this government have been fractured, like the fractured mandate, and the Prime Minister actually has not only owned up, has not only taken any accountability, rather continues to stay silent. Today they're talking about consensus. Today they are talking about coming together as one force, which our national president, Mr. Kharge, has also said that against this kind of terrorism, we need to stand up against this terrorism like a country, like a united force. But where was this consensus when they were passing the Agniveer scheme? Why were the stakeholders not taken on board? Where was this consensus when they were abrogating the Article 370? I think many in their own government, many in their own cabinet were also not aware what was going to happen on the floor of the parliament that day. Where was this consensus when the authorities were asked to stay mum on Pulwama, which was later revealed by the former governor of the state last year? Mr. Satyapal Malik, brought it to the light before the whole nation, how the country was, how our Jawans were betrayed in broad daylight by the sitting government that chooses to conveniently project a false bravado to cover up its misdoings.
So let me ask Lalit Ambardar, is this false bravado, or is it, as the DGP of the state has said, that there are certain political elements who for a number of years have been giving legs and fanning oxygen to this kind of terror apparatus, whether it is done directly or covertly through OGWs, etc. The contention of the security agencies, and this is what has been articulated by the DGP, is that as long as that political oxygen continues to exist and survive and thrive in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, you're never going to put an end to terrorism. While that may be a larger existential question, the more immediate question that needs to be asked, Lalit Ambardar, is who should take accountability for this deteriorating security situation, particularly in Jammu?
Zaka, first of all, I follow jihad conflicts that are happening globally. I don't consider this as ordinary terror attacks. These are acts of war. You have the ratio of fallen soldiers is to the terrorists is 1 to 2. I'm losing 2 soldiers against 1 jihadist. So and the audacity. They ambush a petrol vehicle, army petrol vehicle, the mightiest, one of the mightiest armies in the world. They have the audacity to attack us from the French. And it's not happening for the first time. It has been happening there for the past 32 years, ever since the advent of pan-Islamism-inspired Kashmir Jihad. Now, what are we doing now? First of all, let me tell you, this south of Pir Panjal, I only hope and pray that North Bloc is taking it seriously, in the sense that let's not get, this could be a ploy. Let's not get involved in Rajouri-Poonch, Kathua, and Kishtwar or Doda. I'm afraid the National Highway, the railway bridge that's going to be inaugurated very soon across Chenab, and Amarnath Yatra. We ought to be very, very careful. I would urge through you to the Government of India to take note of that. Number two, you see what happened on 5th of August 2019. You began the process of dismantling of an Islamo-fascistic ecosystem that was prevailing in Kashmir by virtue of Article 370. It's no panache against Kashmir Jihad. Kashmir Jihad is a military problem. And what DGP today, I salute the bravery of the DGP, who Director General of Police, who has talked about the civil society. I think he was very modest. You have to talk about the so-called mainstream of Kashmir is the original Islamist polity of Kashmir. You have National Conference representative here. I don't want to talk about politics. I want to talk about what is fueling, what is supporting, the terrorists do not, the jihadis do not stay in jungles always. In Kashmir Valley particularly, they stay in neighborhoods. They come out, kill, and go back to another house. You have seen recently the visuals of that bunker, that hideout, which was not temporary hideout. In Kulgam, you saw on the television, the hideout was constructed by the owner of the house. It was a permanent structure. That is how the local society, what DGP was alluding to, is the jihadization of the local society. It's a full support. And I'm glad the Congress representative has quoted the colonel, the father, the martyr, that Government of India should dismantle the support structure to the jihad. And the support structure is very important. That's very crucial. And that's coming from the local society, local civil society, local politics.
So
number one, National Conference.
Muzaffar Iqbal Khan of the NC is there, so let him respond to that. Because even though the DGP did not take names today, I think the PDP leader, former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti, came out and said that it's a question of accountability, DGP must be sacked, so on and so forth. The contention of the security forces, Mr. Khan, is you can have whatever level of security, intelligence, surveillance, etc., but if you're going to have elements within civil society, within mainstream parties encouraging this kind of a quasi-political terror ecosystem, then you won't be able to curtail it. Mr. Khan.
Zaka, I don't think that any mainstream political party ever have supported any such subversive or violent activities. All political parties, which are the mainstream political parties, they are the victim of the terrorism for last 30 years. Every political party has offered blood for it. And you know, these political parties, they fought last-ditch battle since 1996 when the democratic government came into being. They fought the last-ditch battle to restore normalcy, to restore democracy, to restore rule of law. Otherwise, there is no doubt in it that, as Colonel Saab has said, Colonel Dini has said that some 2 decades back, all these areas were badly affected by the terrorism. There is no doubt in it. But we succeeded in eradicating it with the help of the locals, be it in Kashmir or be it in Jammu, in Rajouri-Poonch, Doda, Kathua. This support was provided, unstinted support was provided by the locals to eradicate the infrastructure, even the system which was developed by RR, then police, local police. But there is something lacking somewhere. I must tell you, I cannot say that we have never claimed even in the past when the political parties were in power that there is a complete normalcy. But we fought it. I'm not naming any political party, but all political party. I respectfully disagree with the chief, police chief here, who ought not to have given any political statement because it is a political statement.
No, but Mr. Khan, aside of naming any parties, please tell me in Reasi, for example, which is what started off this latest cycle of violence, there are newspaper reports now showing that the terrorists, after killing the pilgrims who were going to a temple, caught up with a local there. I think he was a shepherd or a grazer there, paid him money, and then he managed to give them cover back into the forest. This is a matter of record. It's all over the press. These are stories have been reported on this.
Zaka, I don't rule out any such thing because it is possible. Either he may have paid him money or he may have threatened him or whatever. But there is, as by and large, you will see that in Jammu province, we don't have that ecosystem here. I am also from Jammu. I am from Rajouri. But we don't have any ecosystem supporting these type of terror activities.
So then why has this sudden spike happened in Jammu?
Spike, there may be a change in modus operandi of the terrorist activities from across the border because there is no one local here. You must have heard it that those who were killed here, all of them are foreigners.
Foreign terrorists.
They're from Pakistan.
Okay.
So you don't find, but still, I'll say you raised another question that election. When in 1996 the elections were held, the militancy was at its peak. And there was nobody ready to contest the election. The central government as well as the political parties here, they requested the candidates to contest the election who were afraid that they will be killed. And nobody is safe even today. So making false claims that abrogation of Article 370 has eradicated the militancy, the terrorism from Jammu and Kashmir is totally fallacious.
Let me ask Mr. Patania, and then Lalit also is putting his hand up. Two things, Mr. Patania. If a large majority of the terrorists who have been killed in this latest cycle of violence are foreign terrorists, then what about your claims that you have fenced the international border, your claims that after abrogation of 370, terrorism has come down, etc.? It flies in the face, number one. And the second point that he made, that even in 1996, there were candidates refusing to come and take part in the elections. They were fearing for their life. He says it's a similar situation now. No matter what you say, that normalcy has returned, etc., no one wants to contest the upcoming elections. That's what the NC spokesperson is saying.
No.
Mr. Jacob, I don't want to.
I'm not saying.
The atmosphere is such. The violence is such.
I don't want to enter into an unusual debate with my friend from National Conference. Every political party has tried its own level best to counter militancy in Jammu and Kashmir. But our standpoint remains that there were two categories of militancies. One was permissible terrorism, one was impermissible terrorism. So for the first time, there's a government which means business, which said zero tolerance against terrorism, which is all out. The government employees, the black sheep within the press and the media fraternity, the separatist leadership, they all have been taken hammer and tongs by the Bharat Sarkar simply to ensure a safe, a peaceful, environment and ecosystem for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So this harshness, this strictness, this might have irked, this might have perturbed a few people, but this is virtually for the safety of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. One very simple corollary which comes out from the statement of Director General of Police, Mr. R.R. Swain, that the political parties, he has not named any political party, they are responsible for bringing militancy in the civil society of Jammu and Kashmir. He has accused them of running with hares and hunting with hounds because, number one, he has said that politicians going to the funerals of militants, politicians going to the houses of militants to condole their deaths, politicians publicly saying that Mr. Burhan Wani is a martyr. They are directly saying Afzal Guru, the main architect of the parliament attack, he's again a martyr. They are enforcing a Kashmir Bandh while he was executed in Kashmir. So this thing needs to be done. One thing, the politicians across Jammu and Kashmir should understand that terrorism means terrorism. Terrorism means bad terrorism. We need to be concerted.
So Maima Singh, please respond. How do you curtail all this terror, this spurt in violence, if there is a certain section, even within mainstream parties, who try to eulogize terrorists? It happened in the case of Burhan Wani.
Yes, they called him a martyr.
Yeah.
Your India Alliance partners
let her respond. Yeah.
Please, ma'am. Please.
Complacency is the word, Zaka. Complacency is the word with which the BJP spokesperson speaks of permissible terrorism. Maybe that is a concept for the BJP and its leaders. That has never been a concept for any other party. You see, we have not seen elections in the state of Jammu and Kashmir for the last 10 years, and now with the intervention of the Honorable Supreme Court, maybe they will happen this year. But we have seen how the hindrances were caused to a bar election being conducted. In a state where a bar election cannot be conducted, where the advocates are incarcerated for going for the election, where humiliation, harassment happens to the people of the state simply for asking for their rights and simply for walking out free. There's been a lot of capping of human rights in that state. But the BJP spokesperson, speaks with utmost brazenness when he says there is permissible terrorism and then there is non-permissible terrorism. I think when Pandit Nehru dealt with the situation, when the former prime ministers of the country dealt with the situation, any prime minister, I think we all were dealing with the terrorism with the most stringent possible measures, not categorizing it as permissible or impermissible.
I'm running out of time. Lalit, last minute. I have to wrap up after this.
What I want to tell you is, we do not seem to be taking into cognizance what we have on hand. Neither the North Bloc, nor the polity, nor the ruling establishment. We are trying to say that, I repeat, 5th of August 2019 was a momentous day. Narendra Modi showed the political spine and abrogated the articles.
Jammu and Kashmir.
Sir, 1 second, please. Let him finish, please. Thank you. Let him finish, please. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Lalit.
You cannot fight Kashmir Jihad by stating the tourist arrival in Kashmir. You cannot counter Kashmir Jihad by stating developmental figures in Kashmir. I tell you, in Kabul, Russians were there for 10 years. After that, Americans were there for 20 years. We Indians invested in Afghanistan. We constructed their parliament. In the same parliament, now the Taliban, by the way, the Taliban's arrival was welcomed by National Conference and the PDP leadership in Kashmir. And also, I tell you, the Congress representative, she doesn't seem to be aware of Bar Council of Kashmir. They have a charter. Kashmir issue is in the charter of Bar Council of Kashmir. They are all pro-Pakistan.
That's a different debate. I'm afraid I'm completely out of time tonight. We'll see how this story plays out. But clearly, the onus is on the security forces, the law establishment there, because they have to A, curtail this violence, and B, more importantly, create the grounds for the safe, free and fair conduct of elections, as has been mandated by the Supreme Court to be concluded before the 30th of September.